whoever is watching this, you are deserving of God's glory and God's mercy, and forgive yourself and go after it, because the reality is, whatever desire God has planted into your heart, if He gave you the vision, He will give you the provision.
Welcome to the TGC Experience with your hosts, Nilto and Victor.
All right, everybody, it's great to be back. How you doing, Nilto?
I'm doing great. Even better after that intro.
I know, right?
Just gets me pumped now.
I love it. It's
Absolutely
a complete different dynamic, man. Oh my God.
Whole other vibe.
A lot has changed.
Oh yes. Tell me about it.
All right, we were recording inside of a gym.
Can you believe it?
Who would have thought, right? I honestly can't think of a more fitting place for the TGC to be involved.
Agreed.
Because if you think about it, if you really want to have results at the gym, you got to be aligned with your commitment, right? You have and your commitment with yourself,
right?
And when we think about faith, it's the same thing. You have to have commitment with yourself to want to get better. Yeah. When you go to the gym to work out, you got to have commitment with yourself to want to get in shape. So I love this. I'm so glad that Alan allowed us to use this place. So
Shout out Alan.
So thankful for him, and
Thank
hopefully,
you.
I know, not hopefully, let me get that vocabulary out of my mouth. For sure, this is going to be a success. And
know it.
Now
Absolutely.
that we're starting back, we're not planning on stopping anytime soon, are we?
No, sir. No, sir. And it's crazy because we're talking about the commitment to the gym, which is always something that I struggled with. And it's almost like God has a sense of humor, because I took it as a sign that it's like, hey, man, I want you to be fit. So I'm going to cut the excuses. Your studio is now inside of a gym. So shout out to Alan one more time for opening the doors and allowing for this to happen. Obviously, God opened the doors, but Alan was the one who He used to give us the space and to be able to build this awesome-looking studio,
right? Which
took a whole lot of work.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I was talking to Nilto before we started shooting, and the Victor from last year is very different than the Victor from this year in a lot of different ways. And you should never be afraid of changes, because unless you're afraid to think, right? Like, right. If you think, you should change, because the more you learn, the more you understand that you were doing some things wrong and you have to change. And when we first shot, initially when we first started, I would focus on quality, right? Let's get everything, the most expensive equipment, and let's just try to get this done as, the best quality possible. And that's where when the perfectionism kicks in. But then I read Elon Musk's latest book, and seeing how he tries to cut costs at every possible turn and setting unrealistic deadlines and stuff. And you can't judge the way, you may not like him, but the guy is the wealthiest man in the world, so he's doing something right.
Absolutely.
And coming up with the GoPros was something amazing to me, right? Because we're thinking about it. Okay, if we're going to buy cameras, we're going to spend 15 G's on cameras, where if we use GoPros, we're going to spend $750. So let's make this work. So
I just thought the most amazing part of the process was how we were constantly in like problem-solving mode, because we were trying to figure out ways. Because for one, obviously it's a great space, but we're limited. So we had to get creative with the equipment, the lighting, how we're going to make this work. And the GoPros came in clutch. And it was something that was so like out of the box, because it's not really the type of equipment that people would use for a podcast. But we were playing around, thinking about throwing ideas around. And how fitting is it that the TGC Experience is an experience of its own? And the GoPros would be a focal point of that. And you guys will find out as the episodes come along.
For sure. And again, I think it's having that mindset of problem solving all the time. I think we get so caught up on finding problems.
Right.
Everybody's good at finding problems, right? I hate people that start the sentences if the problem that is, I don't need the problem. I know there's a problem. Let's start with the solution. Like, what's the solution? And it's obviously you're not going to have the solution for everything, but the moment you start switching your mind to solution-based thinking, that's when you start getting closer to solutions. That's the whole idea here. And now let's talk a little bit about the changes, right? Because obviously we We have some great changes. We changed. We're no longer just a podcast. We're going to be an experience. We're going to be doing some things differently this next chapter. I'm not going to call it a new season. It's a new chapter for the Greatest Choice because a lot has changed. And do you want to talk about the change a little bit, how
Sure.
it happened?
Yeah, I mean, from a personal standpoint, I mean, we both have different accounts and live in different lives, obviously. In my case, what I can recall is that the TGC arrived at a point where there were lots of things on all of our plates, and some, for some reason, different than others, took a step back, as we did, because business, family, all these things happening. On my case, the biggest life event was baby number 2. So, Isabella, I love you. Family grew, so it was one of those things that obviously we underestimate how taxing and how much time it evolves, and it certainly does. And it was one of the reasons why the podcast kind of like took a back seat. And as we approached the date where we were thinking, we got to bring this back. And that was part of the change as well, that I started to see that God was lining things up and opening this space where I felt emptiness, that this is my ministry. Like, I need to be doing this.
Right.
So as things aligned, it was like, hey, there's a really, like a gap right here. And what's going to fill that gap? The TGC. We're bringing it back.
For sure.
So it was kind of, I believe that we all go through seasons in our lives where it's very hard for you to balance everything out. There are certain seasons that you always have to prioritize certain things over others. And I think now we're at the point where the TGC is something that we are fully committed on. And we're going crazy with the goals, the ideas that we have, and we are committed to not just leave it on paper.
Audacious ideas.
Very ambitious. Like he said, super different from the original podcast, because we have tons of different content that we were planning on that I hope you guys will, not I hope, I know you guys will definitely enjoy, and it'll impact your lives tremendously, as it has already impacted our lives.
I believe that there are certain times in our lives that it's so easy to find excuses to stop something because it's becoming an inconvenience. And I hate to admit it, but there was a point that the TGC was an inconvenience to me, because getting a business off the ground takes a ton of time. And to me, when we came to the consensus of, oh, let's stop, I wasn't happy, but I wasn't complaining either. I was like, oh, let's just stop. And we found excuses. We wanted to get a new studio. We wanted to do this, do that. But at the end, the essence of it all is that every single person I feel like everybody was in a stage of life where the podcast was not the priority at the moment, right? Correct. And I like to reflect on things like this, because the reason why everything sparked up back again when I was invited to go to the HIP podcast. And surprisingly, when I got there, they're like, oh my God, man, what happened to the TGC? Like we when you started, I looked up to you. I saw a lot of things that you guys are doing, and you inspired us to get going, right? Mm-hmm. We sparked someone else to start something, and now they're going to impact other people. And I went to their podcast as a guest, and it was amazing. I was surprised. They're doing a phenomenal job. Shout out to HIP.
Shout out HIP.
Richie, Eric, Andre. They're doing a great job. I was very impressed with how organized they are, and I was like, dude, why did I stop? If they started before we did, and they were doing a great job, and I was like, okay, listen, I inspire someone to start a podcast. So how many people am I not going to inspire if I don't do anything?
Right.
So it doesn't matter. I don't care if it's perfect. I don't care if we're gonna always shoot out great episodes, but eventually we don't know who we're gonna impact. Right. I had no idea people were even watching us. Like I always thought it was family and friends.
And it's interesting because something that I guess it's just the way that the world is now, that everyone is very caught up in numbers, right? So you're thinking about followers, view counts, shares. But, bro, if you think about it, 200 people. Nowadays, that doesn't sound like a whole lot of people. But could you imagine, like, if Jesus had a platform where he could impact 200 people? I know I always say this, like, the reason why I have a podcast is that if Jesus was alive today, he would have a podcast.
For sure.
Because you got to figure out ways to let the world know about Jesus's, the Word of God, in a way that will reach as many people as possible. And to think that, oh, but we want to reach 1,000 followers, 100,000 followers. Yes, we should have ambitious goals to reach as many people as we can. But even 10, even 5. We mentioned this prior. Like, one person messages us saying, like, I watched this reel and it really made me think, and it made me want to start reading the Bible. To me, like, I already won. Like, bro, I was able to impact somebody because I was audacious enough to think that I'm good enough to sit in front of a microphone and talk on a podcast.
Yeah, we make the mistake of making the results the reason.
Right.
And we need to make the process the reason, the
Exactly.
purpose the reason, the why the reason. Especially anything that in life that you start that's out of your comfort zone, there will be challenges, no matter what you do. Nothing's easy, right? So anything that you do that's different from your routine, that takes work, that takes discipline, that takes commitment, if you only focus on the end result, you're most likely never going to get there.
Right.
You got to find motivators and things to keep you accountable throughout the journey. And you need to learn how to start enjoying the journey and understanding that, wow, hold on, let me look at the first video that we recorded. Let me look at the first episode, and we're going to look back and say, oh, my God, it was horrible, right?
But it's part of the process.
But it's part of the process.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be here if we hadn't had the first. It's a journey. We have to understand how to enjoy the journey, and we can't start projects focusing just on the end result. That should be a goal, not the why.
And a lot of times, I don't remember what conversation we were engaged in that you mentioned this, about how much energy it takes to kind of get it started. And then after a while, it kind of you start to coast a bit because you gain that momentum, because you always have the doubts. So many things kind of went wrong that it was like, geez, like, are we meant to quit? Is this not supposed to happen? But I know for a fact that God was testing our resolve. Like, do you really want this? And we had to so many times kind of regroup, like, how are we going to fix this? How are we going to do this? This is not going to work, but what's the alternative? So we really had to invest a lot of time and energy to get to where we are today. So even behind the scenes, like, you don't start to gauge the quality of the content based on the episode, because there's so much work that went on the back end before we even set these up and click record, that God is honoring us from way before today. What is it?
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny you said about want, right? How much you want something. I think that's something interesting that we have to think about sometimes. Me working on the realm of finances, obviously I have clients that come to me that, oh my God, I want to be rich.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to counter that with how much do you want to be rich? Like, how, because you got to want it, but you got to want it a lot.
And what does rich even look like for that person? Because
but if you want to get in shape, right, whatever, let's not even get into the metrics of it, right? But when I hear that, I'm like, but how much do you want it? Like, what are you willing to give up to achieve it? Who are you willing to become? I
think that's
who are you willing to become to achieve that? Because you're going to have to change. You can't stay the same and expect different results.
Correct.
And when you change, there's a whole chain of command that will change that will completely disrupt your current environment.
Yep.
The moment you make a small change, I talked about the butterfly effect, and you laughed the other day, right?
Coach talk.
Yeah, coach talk. But it's true, right? Like, one small frequency change will become a huge frequency down there.
Oh yeah.
So when you make a small change in your life, you're going to see that there will be resistance from your environment. Your environment could be your parents, your family, your friends. How are you going to deal with that? Who are you going to have to become to deal with that? If you're a person that's short-tempered, how are you going to tame that temperament so you can deal with the adversities that are about to come?
Yep.
And that's something I'm learning every single day, and God has humbled me up so much last year. Because honestly, we don't know anything. Like, I'm 26 years old, and I've always considered myself smart, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not because I'm conceited. If I don't believe that I'm smart, then who else will? But I don't know anything. Being smart and knowing it all, it's a different thing. So you don't know anything. Like, the experience, every single day I learn something new that tells me, oh my God, I was so naive. And
I think that's one of the biggest signs of wisdom,
right,
that you're able to, because the more you know that you don't know.
Exactly. And it's a daily thing, man. And this, like, sometimes you're reading the Bible and you're reading something that you read 2 years ago, but now you read it again and you're like, I don't think it's what I thought he meant. I think it's different. And if you don't read the Bible, sometimes you read a book and you hear a testimony or you hear an example of what somebody went through and how they dealt with certain situations. And then you read again a few years later, you're like, I didn't get this the first time.
Yep.
Like now I'm imagining the emotions that went through this. Because when you can relate to certain experiences, I'm a guy who read hundreds of books at this point in my life for businesses, right? But now going through the experience is so much different. And when I go back to reference to these books, I'm like, oh my God, I don't have to imagine what this person went through. Like I know what they went
experience.
through. Yeah. It that gives you authority. That gives you more confidence. So again, we try to make the TGC impactful in a way that we're going to talk not just about what you should do, but how you should do it. Everybody's talking about what, but nobody tells you about how. My tip today is do it. Just do it. It's so cliche, but it's true though. Yeah, it's right here. Execution, right? You got to do it. You got to act. Sometimes you wait so long. Sometimes you procrastinate so long. Time goes by quickly. On the blink of an eye. We were talking about Melissa.
Oh, dude.
Melissa is my niece. She's 3 years old right now.
My baby girl.
Not so little anymore.
No.
Like,
and dude, it's crazy because there was this video. I really like Jordan Peterson and some of the things that he shares, especially when he talks about parenting. And there's this video that I heard from parts of one of his talks where he talks about the essence and how important the first 4 years of your kid's life is. And I always had that like embedded in my mind. And Melissa is already 3 and she's about to turn 4. So I'm already like on this countdown. I was like, oh my God, it's narrowing down. It's
Did I mess
getting
it
there.
up?
Literally, because you question yourself so much. Because as hard as you invest yourself in anything, you always have like that doubt, right? Did I do enough? Am I good enough? And that's something that I also wanted to talk about because when we went through this pause of the podcast and when the idea came back up to let's start this up again, I had these types of doubts because during that downtime, I was like, was that even something that I was meant to do? Like, am I even good enough? Do I have enough of a vocabulary? Do I have this? Do I have that? There were so many doubts going through my mind that I wasn't certain if this was something that I was meant to pick back up. But what gives me the confidence to do this and just about anything else is the fact that it's not me. It's the fact that the Christ and God who's in me, who gives me the authority to be here in front of this microphone to say these things. Because like you said, I'm talking about personal experiences that I've dealt with and that I've seen God working through my life. And that's what gives me the authority to share with people because I'm just not speaking because Nilto thinks it. It's because I actually lived through it. And I know that what God has done through my life, he can do through whoever's listening today and whoever will listen maybe years from now.
For sure.
Because this content's meant to be there out in the world and affect whoever needs to be affected by it.
And I believe that people, once they understand that they're the image of God, they're the living image of God. Yeah. And it's funny. I was reading in the Bible, and I think it's in English is Jacob. No, it's not Jacob. Jacob.
Yeah,
Jacob, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Jacob. So Jacob fought an angel.
Yeah.
He fought an angel. We always think about the angels as this almighty being, and he's gonna just kill you. And in there it says that
he wrestled.
I believe Colossians, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So
whatever. My pronunciation.
So I read the Bible in 2 languages, so sometimes I get it confused. But here's the thing: in the Bible it describes the angels as mighty in size. They're big, mm-hmm. but not as big in glory as us humans. And when I read that, I thought it was interesting because here on Earth, God left Earth to us, and we don't even know the power that we have. We are here to govern the earth. Mm-hmm. Like, you are deserving. So whoever is watching this, you are deserving of God's glory and God's mercy. And forgive yourself and go after it, because the reality is, whatever desire God has planted into your heart, If he gave you the vision, he will give you the provision. And that's what you're talking about, man. I feel like the doubts, the insecurity, the procrastination is us sometimes forgetting that we're reflecting the light of God. We're here to thrive, right? We are here to succeed. That's what he wants from us. Mm-hmm. And the moment you have that conviction, you become unstoppable. Honestly, it doesn't matter what difficulties you're going through. And it doesn't mean that, yes, the life's going to be easy. No, it's not that. But you're going to be more assertive, that you're going to overcome the challenge because you have what it takes. Yep. And I believe that was one of the things that I learned the most last year, how to be, not just have perseverance, but have faith. Mm-hmm. Just let me stop worrying about how I'm going to get out of the situation, and let me just start focusing on having faith in God and doing the best I can do.
Mm-hmm. There's a verse that I wouldn't say I struggle with, but I find it completely insane. It's in John. John 14:12, it says, "Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father." Even greater things. Like, can you imagine? And like you said, we were created in God's image. So that's what makes us one up the angels, because they were created as angels. We were created in God's image. So when we talk about having confidence in ourselves and the will to do things and start a plan and finish a plan, those are ways that we honor God, because that confidence that we have in ourselves, God wants us to have that confidence in ourselves, because when we have self-doubt, that we don't find ourselves worthy of certain things, we live and we limit ourselves, and we limit the power that God has to change situations, environments, and circumstances in our lives that, for us, it may seem like impossible things. But if you truly have faith in Christ, then you need to have faith in yourself, because God will work through you. So it's this struggle, because I know it's easier said than done, because we'll go through these phases where we're full of confidence, and then the next day, not so much. But so I think what we need to seek, and we've spoken about this on multiple circumstances, is the consistency for just about anything in life. For you to achieve, financially speaking, you got to save consistently for a long amount of time. For your physical health, you got to hit the gym consistently for a long period of time. So your faith, stay in your faith. If you want to start a business, anything in life, it's all about the consistency. And I think that's kind of the secret sauce there.
Yeah, it's how you deal with your problems that are going to dictate how successful you're going to be. Yep. When we talk about consistency, the reason why people sometimes don't even try to get started is because there's so much crappy information on the internet. You see all these influencers talking about how they run 30 miles every single day. That I
wake up 4 a.m.
I wake up at 4 a.m. every single day. I'm super consistent. I read 10 books a day, and I'm not gonna say it's a lie, but you can't tell it's the truth. And that even if it is true, it's their truth. It doesn't mean it has to be yours. I honestly, because even when you go up and down, that's consistent too.
That is true.
Right? Think about it. If you keep doing up and down, up and down, up and down, that's a consistent pattern, right? That's the definition of consistency. But I saw this graph the other day. Well, actually, we ran this experiment in physics as well. If you have a ball and you let it loose, if she goes down and up, down and up, down and up, she goes much faster than the ball that just goes straight, right? Because she picks up momentum. So what we need to draw from this is that when we are going through a tough battle, that's when you have to accelerate. That's when you have to intensify yourself. That's when you have to get closer to God. That's when you have to work harder. That's when you actually have to focus on your diet. That's when you have to read more. That's when you have to clear your mind. That's when you have to be positive. That's when you have to leave all the doubts to the side. It doesn't matter what's happening, because that's what's going to intensify you and give you the push that you need to overcome that situation. And then when you fall again, it's gonna happen, because trust me, every time you can't stay on top 100% of the time. It doesn't happen. Not even Jesus has stayed there 100% of the time. And if Jesus didn't do it, I'm sorry, you have zero chance. I don't believe anybody will do it. I don't believe in any of that crap that I see on the internet, that people saying that they're consistent 100% of the time, all the time, because it's just not humanly possible.
Right. And I think it brings us into another subject that we talk about a lot, which is perspective. Because when you find yourself in these tough situations, it depends on your perspective. You could go and victimize yourself and be like, oh, my life is terrible. I can't do this, I can't do that. Or you can have the perspective that God is putting me through this for a reason. I'm going to learn some sort of lesson that's going to make me somebody better down the line. And I mean, you've attested to this, and even myself, like I've gone through stages or seasons in my marriage where I've had to address tough situations, and the relationship between me and my wife wasn't the best. But we needed to go through that in order for us to grow and get to a different level of intimacy where we're now communicating much better. And I feel like that's the same way when you have a business, in family, in ministry, in church. There's always going to be these tough seasons where the tough is meant for you to grow.
To challenge you.
To challenge you, absolutely. And you have to be up for the challenge, because if you victimize yourself, then you're going to be down in the dumps. Then there's no momentum back up. So if you have that perspective that, look, if I'm going through a tough phase, God is trying to teach me something. I need to get something out of it. So it's that perspective change is the essential part for you to move on from it and be better for it.
And I work with a lot of people now. A lot of people. I have a lot of people that I mentor, and it's so sad because we're in February right now, and I had a lot of people that met with me last week of December, first week of January, and they were so pumped. Oh my God. All these resolutions, all these goals, all these dreams. And it's just February, and some people are already gone. Some people already gave up. Some people already tapped out. I don't understand that. I hate New Year's resolutions because it's just a number, right? Like, unless you work a 9 to 5, you don't need to have the year to quantify your success, right? Because when you have a business, you can look at last year's report to kind of have an idea of how your business did. But you're not a business; you're a person. You don't stop. You don't have to quantify yourself every year. Just be the best version of yourself every day. Strive to be a little bit better than you were the day before, and the results will come. But then when people set this stupid, unrealistic, super optimistic goals, and they go a week, they go two, they don't fulfill that goal, they give up. And how do we quantify that? How do we at least make this a little better so we don't? Because I feel, Nilton, I don't know how about you, but when I set a goal with myself, I don't tell anybody. I just tell myself that I'm going to do something, and I don't do it. Nobody judges me harder than I judge myself, right? And I can only imagine that people do the same. And if you're so used to sabotaging yourself, I think that's when you get depressed. That's when you become unstable. Mm-hmm. You have anxiety. You have self-esteem issues. It's self-sabotage.
Yep.
And the lack of accountability. I think that's the main reason we see this. And being inside of the gym nowadays, it's just so clear to me.
Right.
Because in here we have all types of people, right? We have the guy who's, for example, I'm going to give you a very silly example. I'll maybe even laugh at this. Working in finance, even though I'm not the most ripped guy, but I'm usually the guy who's in the best shape around. Like in my field of work, in my line of work, most people are out of shape because it's a very monotonous work. You work sitting down. If you don't focus, it's very easy to fall off of your diet. You know, you imagine a financial advisor. You imagine an older guy, a little bit of weight, right? It's very stereotypical. Now, I always felt good about myself. I was like, okay, I'm not in a horrible shape if I compare myself with these people. Then I started working out with Alain, a bodybuilder champion, and he makes me feel like crap. But it's not. I love that because he holds me accountable. Now I have my bar is higher now.
Right.
Now I know what to look up to. Like, hey, I don't accept anything less than this. I don't envy him, but I don't accept anything less than this.
Right.
Within my own circumstances, within my own reality, right? I'm not a bodybuilder, so I'm not going to focus 100% of my energy in this, but I do want to be in a better shape, and that's the guy I'm going to look up to. This is the guy I'm going to network with. This is the guy I'm going to be around,
right,
so he can help me become better and push myself to places that I wouldn't push myself if I was alone or if I was working out with other people.
Yes.
So what is your take on that?
Absolutely. And funny you mentioned Alain because I had him in my mind because we had a meeting yesterday. And he talked about how in his personal training side of things, he had some guy come in and he asked to be trained by Alain. And he's like, but I want you to scream at me. I want you to slap my back, to scream and to motivate me. And he's like, no, I'm not that type of trainer, because you're not looking for a trainer. You're looking for a motivator. That's not me. I'm a trainer who's going to keep you accountable when you're here, but you need to be your motivation. And when you mentioned the failed New Year's resolutions, I feel like people ride on motivation, which easily runs out, which is when we start going from motivation to discipline, which is what keeps us going, regardless of the date, regardless if it's January 1st or 21st or February 2nd, whatever it is. The discipline is what keeps you going. And he showed me this video, which I thought was super impactful, because we talk about the importance of building good habits. But quitting is also a habit that people have, that you start something and you easily quit. That becomes a habit. So you have all these grand ideas. Oh, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to get a new job. You have all these ideas, but you don't even quit because you don't even put any effort into it. So it's very easy, and you program yourself to just accept quitting on just about anything. And that was very impactful to me, because that is true. Like if you have something, if God put something in your heart, or if you have this desire to do something, it's not a coincidence that you thought that. And you should feel worthy and able to seek it out. Maybe you're not ready for that right now, but seek the knowledge, seek the people that can guide you to get you on the path to get that dream or that plan of yours off paper and actually execute it. So I think it was a tremendous piece of information, where quitting is a habit. I never thought of quitting as a habit, but it really is. And when you talked about the accountability aspect, I think it goes hand in hand with that, because if we train ourselves to be easily accept quitting, you will fall off and you won't really get anything off the ground. So when you think about, like, I have all these things going on. I've got my family. I've got a business, 2 businesses for that matter. Got the podcast. But why do I keep going? Why? What's the why, right? Which is another essential part of the equation, that the discipline is what keeps you going. But you have to have a why, a purpose as to why you're doing it. And when you talk about going to the gym, yes, I want to be more fit. And like you said, being around Alain, just being here motivates me to challenge myself to reach a level that I haven't reached before, because I've never had discipline on going to the gym. But now I've had like 95% of my excuses have been cut off. I have no reason to say, like, I don't have time to go to the gym. Yes, I do. I'm here all the time, because now we got a studio, office, / there's all these things going on in the gym. So I'm always here. So I think that's and also another thing that we could address is the excuses that we're so used to giving ourselves that go hand in hand with the quitting. Okay, yeah, I mean, I can't do this because of this. I can't start a business because I have 2 kids and I have a wife. Like, yes, you can. You just got to prioritize.
The excuses, I mean, in the essence of the word, right, it's you putting off what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's very simple. You're just putting off what you need to do, and you know the people that it's common. Like if you network and in a group of people, and you always have the guy who talks a lot. He speaks a good game. He sounds super knowledgeable, but he doesn't do anything with it.
Right.
And then when you ask and you try to hold that person accountable, you hear the same stories, right? And well, I mean, to me, it's something that I'm actually trying to learn how to be a little bit more sympathetic to people's excuses, because, you know, I had this guy the other day tell me, oh man, yeah, my father, he never gave me any support. I was like, was he present? Yeah. Did he give you food? Yeah. All right, that's more than mine did, and I don't know. So what else do you need, right? And it's, again, like, maybe this guy who taught to me never had this perspective before. You got to have perspective. I think in order for you to avoid excuses, because, again, I don't want to just talk about what. If you catch yourself giving excuses, I want you to have a drawn vision and look yourself from outside of your perspective. If you were someone else looking at you, telling that excuse, how would you feel? How would you address? How would you analyze the situation? Is that a pattern? Do you have a pattern of giving excuses?
Right.
Do you not like to hold yourself accountable? When somebody gives you feedback, how do you take it?
Mm-hmm.
How do you take feedback? Because if you want to grow, trust me, there will be growing pains. And it's not everybody who's going to give you advice that you should listen to. That's not what I'm saying. But if it is someone that is somewhere you want to be. If it's someone that is working in the field that you work and they're very successful at what you work, if they are somebody that you look up to in other areas, I say spirituality, for example, is something that you look up to in that person, maybe they do, you should listen to them. But if they're not doing anything that you want to do, if they're not winning themselves, why should you listen to them? And again, working in finance, I hear this all the time. Like, people come to me, they have a meeting. Now, I don't claim to be the know-it-all, but I do have a decade of experience in this field.
Right.
Then they listen to my advice, they listen to what I say, and they go seek validation with people that have less money than they have, less experience than they have.
Right.
They're completely, utterly unequipped to give them the information. And they let those people's fears impact them from moving forward with their lives.
Right.
How many times we let other people's feelings and insecurities impact our life?
And a lot of times, the tricky thing with that is that a lot of times it comes from a good place.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of these examples that you gave, I would assume that a lot of the times, if you're talking to a young man or girl, for example, their parents might be super hesitant on allowing them to follow through with something like that because they don't have the knowledge.
Yep.
And because the parents are your first line of defense, right? That I'm going to listen to my parents rather than listen to this know-it-all guy because they want the best for me. But they want the best for you based on their limited perspective. And it's such a present thing, especially in our community when you talk about like the immigrants, because right, the first ones that came along, they're just here, just trying to work hard, provide. They didn't even have time to think about financial education. They're just trying to get the bills paid.
They're just grinding.
Yeah. And now when you have this second generation of kids who grew up here and they have so many more opportunities laid out to them and they have access to information such as the information that you provide through BYOB, it's a matter of stepping out of that comfort zone. It's like, hey, I understand my parents want the best for me, but they have a limited perspective on the possibilities that are out there. So then you have to kind of take that step of faith, right? And I need to seek the education, seek the knowledge, and actually follow through. So
I think some parents have a difficulty understanding this because, especially for Christian parents, they always resort to, well, in the Bible it says that you should honor your parents.
Right.
Now, honoring your parents just means accept them for who they are. That's it. You just have to accept them for who they are. You don't have to just listen to everything they say.
Right.
You don't. Like, when you become part of adulting, actually, is understanding that your parents are not perfect.
Yes.
Understanding that your parents are flawed.
Yeah.
Understanding that your parents did their best with what they had. Okay? Just accept them and do better.
Yes.
I actually had a very, very recent example. I was helping this 24-year-old girl, and she wanted to, start working with us, and not just with her money, but she wanted to physically work. She wanted to be part of the team. And I was doing a virtual meeting with her, and she had to get a couple of documents that I asked her to, and I heard her parents talking to her. And I was hearing the mumbling, but I could tell that it was like getting aggravated.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked her, I was like, hey, your parents, do they want to talk to me? Do they have any questions they want to ask? She's like, I don't know. I was like, no, get me in front of them. Let me talk to them. Because I understand where they're coming from.
Right.
But they were also offered to be in the meeting and they didn't join. So let me go talk to them. So the dad was there and I talked to him and I was like, hey, listen. He asked me some of the questions. I answered the questions and I could see that he was still hesitant. And I was like, hey, listen, man, how old are you right now? He's like 67. I was like, okay, so are you ready to retire? Oh, no, man, I don't have any money. It's like, okay. So do you think you should give advice to your daughter on what to do with her money right now? Do you really think that she should not save for the future because what the parent was telling me, look at this, and this is just the lack of financial education. He was telling me, hey, listen, right now she can do this much because she doesn't have that many expenses. But as one day she's going to want to have a car, she's going to want to buy a house, she's going to want to do this. It's like, okay, but this is what we need to teach her, that she will do it if she has the money to do it after paying herself first. Because otherwise she'll get in this rabbit hole of always buying things with no money, financing everything that she does, never prioritizing saving money, and then she's gonna look back. She's gonna, in the blink of an eye, she's gonna be 67, sitting at a chair, telling her daughter to do the same thing. And then that's when he had a shock, and I was like, wow, I never thought about it this way. And I was like, well, just think about your situation. Let's say that I was talking to you when you were 24.
Right.
Wouldn't you be glad that you had this information?
Mm-hmm.
Now, don't let your insecurities stop her.
Right. And it's interesting because we grow up hearing this respect your elders, right?
Yes.
That's I'm not arguing against it. You should always respect your elders. But I come to think of it, especially in this day and age now where there's this thing called the internet, right? Which allowed for information to be readily available for anybody who seeks it, right? So if you think about a generation prior, so like from my dad to his grandfather, to his dad, right? In order for you to get information, you'd have to speak to people who had that information. And you would only access them physically because there was no internet, right? If you wanted to get some piece of information, you didn't have Google, so you had to go to a library of a book that someone read or that someone wrote, right? So it was much harder for you to gain knowledge. The only way for you to gain knowledge was through your elders, people that have done what you were looking to do. But now that there's been a shift, a significant shift. Now, I'm not saying don't respect your elders because you still have to respect them in a manner of have manners, right? But as far as respect is concerned, you could be a 26-year-old with significantly more financial knowledge than someone in their 50s. Because just because they're older doesn't mean that they know more about a given topic. So nowadays, there's a shift where, and I'll bring this to my side, when you talk about parenting, you tend to model and parent your kids the way you were parented. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that I've caught myself that I was like, hey, this is not the sort of behavior that I want to pass on. Just because my parents did it to me doesn't mean that I'm going to do it to my kids. So I've had to seek knowledge through educators, through psychologists, through people that know the field, because now I have this information that I can go seek it and change these pattern of behaviors that now I raise my daughter differently than my mom raised my sisters. It's not to say that she did a bad job. She did the best she could with what she knew. But if I raise my daughters that same way, I'm being very ignorant because I have means into where I can find information that will challenge my behavior and make me a better parent. So I have to seek it out.
I think it's just laziness.
Absolutely. It's not even laziness. I think it's complacency because you just tend to model it. And there are behaviors that you believe it's okay because I turned out fine.
No, but I mean, just if you know something is wrong and you decide to do it as because you don't have more information, for example, right?
Yes.
It's laziness. Like nowadays, you can find anything you want to find.
But the issue with that is that before you seek the information, you have to identify that there is a problem.
Mistake, yes.
That sometimes just because your parents raised you that way, you just tend to model it and you don't even question it. And I found myself in situations at times I was like, hey, maybe I'm being a little abrupt. Maybe I shouldn't snap on her like this just because she did this. Because, bro, it happens in a flash.
In an instant.
Because I've never had a 3-year-old before that now has all this personality and like she's talking back and like, okay, how do I deal with this? Like I can't just snap. Like how crazy is it that a 3-year-old can make me lose my mind and completely lose my composure? A 34-year-old man who has dealt with these emotions in the past, I need to know how to handle myself in order to portray to her, listen, when you're feeling this is how you should behave. If I'm losing it with a 3-year-old, what chance does she have? So we're trying to model things for the next generation better than what my parents did. And it goes hand in hand with the finance world. Like if you limit yourself to what your parents knew about finance, you're doing the next generation a disservice. So you have to seek it out, whether it's financial knowledge, spiritual, every area of your life. It's your duty. It's your obligation nowadays to be better than the generation before.
It comes down to education. I believe the only reason you knew that what your parents did may not have been right is because before you became a father, you studied on fatherhood. You read books because that's what you told me. So
yeah, but before it's still theoretical. Right. It's very different when now you're caught in these situations.
But the theory sometimes at least gets you thinking.
Oh, absolutely.
Hold on. Maybe.
Yes. It prepares your frame of mind. Exactly.
Because people nowadays, because all these motivational speakers talking about action and stuff, and they downplay the theory of things. But here's the thing. The theory sometimes is what you need because you're not going to be able to live out every single scenario. And
correct.
How unfortunate would one be if they had to learn just from their own mistakes?
Yes.
Right? The wise learn from other people's mistakes. And that's where books and education comes in. Mm-hmm. And it has to have a balance. You can't just focus on education and no action, and you can't just have action without education because then you're going to fail so many times, and not everybody has the resilience to fail consistently and keep picking themselves up. So you have to have a balance. Guys, this is just a sneak peek of what TGC experience is going to be about. And 2024 is going to be the year where we're going to challenge you to become the best version of yourself. And at the same time, we're going to be challenged by you to become better.
Yes, sir.
I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you.